We'll cover two parts with Kit Bag M. We'll get that centre differential that we've had placed aside since the very beginning of the build into place, as well as finish off the rear end of the vehicle, the point at which our Tekno SCT410 2.0 really takes form. Kit Bag M is a relatively short section of the build, yet has a large impact since we bolt on the rear end and finish off the main body completely. We'll start with the centre differential mount, which sits directly onto the chassis between the rear ends of both side guards, and is then secured from the bottom with three 12mm flathead screws. With that in place, reach for the centre differential and insert a single O-ring into the spur gear side, using the centre drive shaft to push down into place. And while placing down into position, take care to simultaneously insert the centre drive shaft so that the dog bone end feeds completely between the front and centre differentials. With the differential now in place, cover the opposite side with the motor pinion plate. This covers and protects the motor pinion gear as it meshes with the differential spur gear. Secure with a 12mm caphead screw into the rear side, and another in the front, although this one with thread lock applied. Once in place, lower down the centre differential cover and secure with four 12mm caphead screws, one in each corner. The rear two can go straight in, although bear in mind the front two screws are going into the metal motor mount, so thread lock is recommended just for these two screws. So that's the centre of the truck complete now, well without electronics, but all hardware is now in place and time to get the rear end of the vehicle bolted on, taking care to ensure the rear universal drive shaft feeds into the centre differential. And upon carefully flipping the chassis over, secure from the bottom with two 10mm flathead screws at the rear centre, along with two 14mm flathead screws further up. With the chassis the right side up, it's time to install the rear chassis brace, with these two brace parts connected together, secured with a single 18mm caphead screw, and then lower down into position, and secure from the rear with two 14mm caphead screws going through the rear shock tower and into the mount, and then from the bottom with a single 12mm flathead screw. That just leaves us with our rear bumper mounts. Just like the front, the first goes directly into the rear shock tower, secured with two 18mm caphead screws, after which we remove the 10mm screw we temporarily inserted earlier, to make way for the rear skid plate, where we use a 14mm buttonhead screw back into the same thread, and finally back underneath its two 15mm flathead screws, and two final 25mm flathead screws. Again, like the front, these secure directly into the rear gearbox, securing it even further. Last but not least, we're left with two 12mm buttonhead screws which secure the rear chassis brace even further. And with that, we complete Kit Bag M, and we can really see the truck take shape now with all main components now in place. In the next two bags we get some much needed bounce, certainly needed for a truck of this nature, with bags N and O, front and rear shock assembly.